Donna, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you. We all had a productive morning, but my name is Donna Foster and I'm.
Have a good meeting.
One of the requirements of the commission is that each agency board be trained in the process so that there aren't any hidden secrets here about this process. I'm going to start, and I'm going to follow the handout that you have probably in front of you, I hope. Do you?
We do have that handout. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I'm going to follow that, but at any point in time that anyone wants to interrupt me or wants to, expand on the information, I'm glad to do so. I'll start first by who the Agency Head Salary Commission members are. Before you see it's 4 members of Senate Finance. Senator Leatherman is the chair, Senator Campbell, Senator Gregory, Senator Matthews. Our appointees from Ways and Means are Representative Smith, Representative Bales, Representative Howard, and Representative Summerall. And we have 3 appointees of the governor, but 1 vacancy. So Mr. Bernie Maybank and Ms. Debbie Barner are the 2 gubernatorial appointees. The history of the commission is in 1984, the commission decided that actually the salaries of agents and directors were decided on the floor of the House and Senate. And that was not necessarily a good way of doing it because it was who maybe had the best lobby, got the best salary, and had nothing to do with the size and scope and responsibility of a position. So the first commissioners were appointed in 85. A performance evaluation process was developed for agency heads because the commission wanted all increases to be based on performance. A salary structure by an independent entity was set into place, setting ranges based on job responsibility, accountability, scope of the position. It provided for a periodic comprehensive job analysis study for each of these positions, which I'm going to get into a little more in depth in just a minute, but I'm saying that so that you understand that these salary structures just aren't set randomly. They are set based on job content. And then the commission awards pay increases over the years based on a variety of factors, with the main one being performance. The role of the Agency Salary Commission is to develop pay policies and monitor the market trends. Each year, the pay policy for the commission is kind of decided based on the market, as well as, let's be honest, the economy at the time. Obviously, in the very, very, hopefully we're always lean, but in the economic downturn years, quite honestly, there were no increases for obvious reasons. Sorry, did someone have a question?
No, ma'am.
In hiring an agency head, which you are not doing right now, but your board would have to have prior favorable recommendation of the commission to ask to offer a salary above the minimum of the salary range. The salary ranges are set from minimum, midpoint, and maximum, and the commission likes to consider the qualifications for the position, the market at that point in time that person is being hired, as to whether or not they should be hired above the minimum of the range. The commission also recommends salary increases, as I told you earlier. Quite honestly, the only mechanism for giving a salary increase for your agency head, as well as all, is to request a salary increase from the commission based on justification. Again, I'm going to get into more detail about the comprehensive job analysis that's done every 4 years. The next page, the role of staff, which I'm a person. I provide the training on the performance evaluation system. I have my lifetime career has been in human resources, so I assist in the preparation of requests and assist in pay policy development for the commission and maintain all of the records, the salary histories, and perform any duties or provide any assistance to any of the boards and commissions for the agency heads or the commission that are needed at that time. We are governed by provisos and laws, and none of this is by regulation. It's all within the Appropriations Act or the statute. There is a requirement by statute that an agency director be paid within the salary range of the position. And we get into this sometimes when you are appointing an interim agency head, and you might want to put them in at below the minimum of the range or whatever. But the agency director must be paid within the salary range because that is the market for that position. I've mentioned higher above minimum. That takes commission approval. Salary increases requires requests to the commission. Bonuses are prohibited when your state employees within GDSN are provided. Bonuses in the Appropriations Act that does not cover the agency heads covered by the Agency Head Salary Commission. In rare exceptions, the commission will go to do that. But again, most of the increases for agency directors are based on performance. Reporting of salary supplements, that doesn't really pertain to you. That's really for most of the higher ed institutions. But if at some point, if you are considering that for some reason, let's talk because it's an intricate process. Dual employment requires approval of the Agency Head Salary Commission as well as the State Fiscal Accountability Authority. The reason for this is the commission views the agency director's position as a 24/7 position, not something that ends at 5 o'clock where they can go teach classes or go have another job on the weekends. Moving expenses are provided to an agency director moving out of town, and there is the requirement for the training of any new board or commission member. The comprehensive job analysis, and this is very pertinent right now. I know that you're mostly interested in the evaluation process right now. That's where you are, but Mary will be receiving probably tomorrow a memo from Senator Leatherman regarding we call it the Hay study because the Hay group was who did the study before, but now it's called Korn Ferry Hay. The comprehensive job analysis is done every 4 years. It's required by law so that we can update the positions. So if the scope has changed or legislative changes have occurred with regard to that position or the market trend has changed for that position, it gives the Agency Head Salary Commission an opportunity to revise that salary range. And we require an updated position description, which Mary will receive in the mail and share with you, Chris, is fair, and you can share with the whole board. There will be the requirement for an updated position description in that memo by September 8th. Interviews with each agency director, they will be virtual for the first time this year, but for obvious reasons, up to an hour will be conducted for each agency director's position. If the board chair or designee would like to be accompany the agency director in that interview, that's fine. We will be coordinating those interviews probably in the next 2 weeks. They will be conducted at the end of September, early October. During the study, the job content is reviewed, and a review of the salary ranges is recommended to the commission. And the Korn Ferry Hay Group analyzes, again, the current compensation practices for internal pay equity as well as external market competitiveness. This market is typically your Southeast because we don't really compare, our salaries don't really compare to New York or California, so we for the most part consider the southeastern states as well as we consider some private sector data with a heavier weight on the public sector. Again, the Hay Group will recommend if there's been significant market changes or anything of that nature, they will make recommendations to the commission for its consideration. Before I leave that process, I know I've kind of flown through that. Are there any questions about that process?
Not seeing any on our end.
Okay. All right, the performance evaluation process, which I'm sure that's probably the stage that you are at right now. This is kind of the other arm of the process, the setting the salary range and getting, the job analysis for the position is kind of the position-related aspect that the commission deals with. Now, this aspect deals with the individual who is in the position and they're in that position. Most of you are probably in some kind of business. If not, you probably do it even with your children. It's a simple method to the process. It's not really any different than any of us do. You set a planning stage, which are the goals and objectives for the year. And we're all of us set goals and objectives all of the time, and then monitor the performance in between to see if those goals and objectives are being met, and then talk with the person about how they're meeting them or not meeting them, and then do an evaluation of the performance. It will be left up to your board, your individual process for doing this. In most cases, it's not required on our part, but in most cases, the agency director will submit some kind of written document to you about how she has accomplished those goals during the year, the individual goals that you set last fall for her. You as your board will review the proposals that she makes, say, well, Mary, you did or didn't do this, or you exceeded this, why didn't this occur? Well, there was an intervening event called the COVID virus, so why this didn't occur. So that's the opportunity for you as a board to gather the information that you need to complete an accurate performance evaluation. On the performance evaluation, there are 6 performance objectives focusing on 6 real general areas that really the commission feels like is integral to any leader. Obviously, leadership, strategic planning, customer focus, workforce focus, which is the human resources aspect, process management, which means continuous improvement, and of course the financial management, which is critical. The performance objectives, as you've set them, when you set them for next year, should be measurable so that you can tell the agency director what your expectation is, so that there won't be a surprise. I thought if I did this, that would accomplish what I was needing to do. No, you needed to do this. So the communication on the front end or during the interim performance conferences is critical. Then as this says, every year, the copy of the planning stage is due by September 15th. This year, because of the COVID virus, that is changed to October 15th. The next stages are the interim performance conferences. I've really talked about that as I've gone through this, but that can again be whatever role, how you want that to occur is left up to you as a board. Most boards will use their board meetings for the agency director to give her update of what's going on and what's being accomplished and what's not being accomplished and why, as the performance conferences. It's just a title on probably what occurs regularly all the time. Next stage, and again, this is guidance in how you approach this, but again, the agency director presenting information to you about how she met her goals and objectives, you asking questions, obtaining sufficient information to evaluate the performance. The stage that you are probably at now is the evaluation stage. This composes several things. It's the evaluation of each of the performance objectives, and again, different boards handle the evaluation stage differently. Some have a subcommittee, some do it within the full board meeting, some the chairman does it and then presents it to the full board. So it's the method that you would like, how you want your board to function. Each board member is given an evaluation survey, which is just a one-page survey, which is really like the performance characteristics of the agency director. It's a composite score sheet of each individual board member's input to that is then compiled with the number being conveyed on the overall document. The overall document, again, I say consult your legal staff as to whether you conduct this in executive session or consider this a public document and do everything in open session. Most boards do the discussion in executive session and then come out and vote on the level of performance in open session. But again, I'll let you, how you handle that is how you should be advised legally to about the publicness of this discussion, and that this is a personnel issue.
Emma, Chairman, Emma, can I just ask a quick question?
Yep.
So I might have missed it. I was listening and speed reading the document also. So your recommendation is, since it's since personnel matter, to hold a conclusion or whatever for the salary issue in executive session, right?
Well, again, I'm saying discussion, and again, I want you to consult your legal staff on how you handle this with regard to FOI. But to the extent possible, I would recommend, if that's the way you want it done, is discuss the discussion part in executive session, and then come out and do a formal, some type of motion or something that would be on the records.
Sure, but I mean, the analysis part should be, it just instinctively, it's a personnel matter, it ought to be an executive session.
Correct.
Well,
correct?
I happen to agree with you, but I don't know whether the courts do, and they haven't said that, but that's why I'm asking you to consult your legal advice. That is the way it has occurred this far throughout this process, but, there hasn't been a court challenge to say whether that is accurate or not, so I'm not going to offer legal advice on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and there is a method for the chairman. Chris, you will compose the composite score sheet to go with that evaluation, and I'm sure your HR person can assist you with that. But the method of doing that is very simple. Again, this handout says that the document is due by August 15th because that is when it always is, and we've extended that to September 15th this year. If because of when your board meets you need an extension, just please call and ask. I mean, the commission understands that you don't need to call a special board meeting just to get this here by September 15th if you're meeting on September 18th. The tips for successful evaluations. This is your opportunity to explain to the Agency Head Salary Commission the level of performance of your agency director. The good issue is that in that these members are from House Ways and Means and Senate Finance. They are familiar with agencies, so some agencies take it for granted that that's there, and they'll just put C in one sentence. I would recommend you not doing that. This is the opportunity to say how your agency director met or exceeded your expectation and the impact of that decision on the customers that you serve. This year will be a very different kind of evaluation for every agency director because of the COVID virus. We all know that. We know that so much of the second half of the year has been devoted to that in so many different ways. So say how your agency director has performed that and the significance to the overall impact of that has been to the state of South Carolina.
Donna, we've done that in the past via the chair essentially writing a letter to go along with the survey. Is that appropriate? Is that how your commission wants to see that? I mean, what's the best mechanism for conveying that?
That is, because, a cover letter is nice. If you want, there is a comment section at the end of the evaluation if you want to put all of your comments there. But a cover letter just saying, our agency director has performed exceptionally this year, and we would recommend a salary increase. Putting that there is helpful for the commission, but it's not required.
Okay.
If I were in your seat, I would do it just because, it tells how you feel. And it doesn't leave just the commission there to decide, what to do, but gives guidance on exactly what your board's opinion of this is.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, and you submit that to, you've got my address, and submit the evaluation to us. And if you have any questions during the process, or you have any questions at any point, I'm always available for you to give me a call, and I'll be glad to talk through the situation, whatever it might be, if I can help in any way.
Any other questions for Donna? Any questions from staff for Donna?
No, when we were doing, looking at the planning document, we just pulled the goals of the agency off of the accountability report that we have. Considering that, the agency head is supposed to fulfill the goals of the agency, so, and as we prepare for next year's, we're working on that accountability document right now. So we can move ahead and do that planning document, at this time for next year. And then the last year's goes back to the planning document we submitted last September. So that's kind of basically what rolls into it.
Yeah, Donna, I can tell you. Yeah, go ahead.
That clearly is the way it should work. The accountability report saying how you're accounting for the performance of the agency. Your evaluation is accounting for the performance of the leader of the agency. So they should go hand in hand. The plan for the document for next year should go hand in hand into, what are you going to be accountable for the next year? It's just the document is the personal aspect, and the accountability report is the organizational aspect.
And Donna, what you were talking about as far as the September deadline, that is sort of hitting us as far as when our next meeting is, which I believe is the 20th. Right?
Yeah.
And that is fine.
That's okay.
17th or 18th.
We understand, and especially during this time with everything, so much having to be virtual, and the commission's being very lenient with extensions. That is not a problem, and you're not penalized for it because you aren't timely. If it doesn't come to December, they won't be happy, but they understand if you're not, it's we have a couple of weeks one way or the other or so.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Because this will be basically us in September. We'll be having to work this pretty hard.
I've supplied you with those documents and let you know what we've been doing, so you can be discussing those.
Do we have a plan for executive session meeting sometime with all the commission in order to discuss this?
Usually we have done it as part of the September meeting. We've had that. Now, if we get to the point where we feel like we need a special meeting call, we can always do that as well.
Certainly needs to be in executive session, so we need to get here then.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do executive session.
I think we can do it via the video. It's just not broadcast. We can limit it so there's no public access, that it's just a video that's shared between the commission.
Not taped or anything else.
Not taped or anything else. Yeah.
We talked.
It would be essentially, those moments before we actually turn it, before Mark turns it on, we're all on, but we're not recording and it's not for the public or anything like that. It would basically just be an extended version of that.
So Mark could say there'd be no record of this whatsoever anywhere?
Yeah.
You can do that. We all chat before we go live, and then Mark will say, okay, we're gonna go live, and then we go live.
I know we go live, but I thought that part was taped somewhere.
No, it's not. Up until the moment when we say we're convened, we're off the record.
Okay, well, maybe we,
And that's probably a discussion for us to have electronically over the next couple of weeks as far as whether we want to. And some of that may be how much we have on the September meeting agenda. Thank you. Whether we want to have a separate session solely for purposes of doing that, which is fine. We've done that in the past as well. We've had a meeting where the sole issue is the review.
I know, Mr. Chairman, we had talked in the policy that we've got coming for, in September, the policy that we're working on is gonna be extensive, is that correct?
well, that's October, that's the one for, it's gonna be moved to October, so our meeting is gonna be less extensive in September now, it's been moved off.
Okay.
What we were talking about. We could technically, we could decide, we could do a short policy meeting and then do it then or whatever, we want to do, like a flash of an hour, whatever we want to do.
What about if we limit David to 5 questions?
Whole meeting or
That's
just
already been,
50?
excuse me, that's already been submitted to the policy. And I move personally that it be tabled, and it was. You're too late, sorry about that.
All right. Any other questions for Donna while we got her on the phone? Any other questions about the process or anything that we've got coming up in September? Anything else time to ask? Okay.
It's hard for me right now because I'm trying to get my head around, what she means by goals and, I mean, so you're saying then, Donna, that we're, your recommendation is that we just, evaluate based on specific goals and objectives only? Is that what you're saying, or is that, you're saying that's primary?
Well, that's primary. Obviously, if additional accomplishments have occurred beyond, I mean, those goals are not the only performance of the agency director. If there's additional information you want to put in the document, there's nothing preventing you from doing that. And it's got an additional comment section. I mean, if you want to say, you know, something that occurred that's above and beyond what you have talked about in the goals and objectives, I mean, it's your opportunity to say, if that affected the overall performance, I put it in there.
Okay.
One thing we'll need to do is, over the next couple of weeks, let's get all the forms out from HR for us to start taking a look at this stuff, get it out as early as possible. The forms are a good guide, having done this before, they're a good guide. Any other questions? Okay. Donna, I appreciate you joining us and working this into your schedule.
Oh, no, I was glad to. And if you wouldn't mind, Chris, if you could have Mary or someone on the staff, please send me a list of who was present, since I'm not there and I can't see.
We will do.
Okay, all right. I hope y'all have a productive day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so we started off with that just because we were on a specific timer with that. So we'd sort of jumped ahead on our agenda to do that. And so we will now go back in reverse. And I would ask Commissioner Blackwood to read the notice of meeting statement for this portion of the meeting.
Okay. A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of August 20th, 2020 Commission Training Session was distributed on August 18th, 2020 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistance, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So now I would recognize Ms. Myers, who is here with us today, to present her training for us on governance and FOIA requests.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. I am dealing with several challenges as a trainer who has done this for 20 or more years. And I'm going to remove my mask and replace it with a shield so that you can hear hear me clear, okay?
Great, thank you.
Is that good? Can you hear the volume?
Yes, ma'am, I think we're good.
Okay, in your folders, you have a PowerPoint presentation, which is what you have there. And I have given you some handouts. Of the handouts that you've received, and Commissioner Blackwell, I'll make sure that you get them. Blackwood, I'll make sure you get them too, okay? There is a blue form at the very end, and it is called a evaluation. So I am going to ask you to put that nearby so that you can indeed begin to take a look at it and give me some feedback. Is that okay? Okay, so what I'd like to do in the next hour and 15 minutes or so is to review with you the duties and responsibilities of you as a commissioner. And this commission has some seasoned persons, and this commission has some newbies, okay? So I'm going to ask my seasoned commissioners, as well as the staff, to jump in at any time and help me with this, okay? Because I think it may have been a minute before you all have done this.
Oh, it's been a long time since we've had commissioners.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. So with that being said, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And that page is, let's see here. Okay, is that the goal of this training is for us to look at what the role is of this commission. We want to talk about what you are here to do. Where are your loyalties? Talk some about the Freedom of Information Act, also known as FOIA, thank you. See, I want you to talk, and then the rest of it might want to limit you, Commissioner Thomas. I want to hear you. It helps me know that you're listening and that you're engaged. We're going to talk about ethics, roles and responsibilities, and some kind of a sensitive subject, commissioner and staff relations. So when we start talking about what is governance, we start with who makes up the commission. So, may I call you Commissioner Rawson? Okay, let me call on you. How did you come to be a part of this commission?
Well, I have been working with disability special needs through my daughter.
Yes.
And then I served on the Florence board.
Yes.
And then the governor asked me to serve in this capacity.
Okay, so you were not walking down the street eating a tuna fish sandwich, and all of a sudden something said, get on that DDSN commission, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So all of you are here because of the governor's appointment, correct? Okay, now, so it's no accident that you're here. You make a very special group, and we want to talk about the fact that governance means what it takes to run an organization, and in this case, DDSN. Okay, are there any policies? Let me call on my chairman. Any policies and procedures that we need to be aware of?
Yes,
Just a few, right?
just a few.
Okay, all right. And then there are some laws. There's some laws that affect us. Not only are there the statutes in Title 44, but you also have bylaws, correct? Okay, so having said that, we want to talk about some of those as well. So when you talk about what your state agency is and is doing, it generally starts with what is your purpose. And I've seen a purpose. Let me see if I can pull that out the hat here. Do I have something that looks like it was revised back in July of 2020, and it's called BDSN Needs Policy, Needs Ends Policy. And it starts off with what DDSN exists to do. Anybody seen that other than me? I know I've been doing a lot of homework here. Okay, so just to make sure we're all on the same page, it says that DDSN exists to coordinate person-centered services and programs for persons with intellectual disability and related disability, autism, head injuries, spinal cord injuries, so that each person supported may reach his or her full potential. Okay, now there's some other things in there, but that's an awesome responsibility for the agency, right? So what about the commission? Where does the commission fit in? Hello? Your job then is to provide policy and procedure and guidance and feedback, and you don't do it alone, do you? You work within a framework. So there are those things called bylaws. Let me put on Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Miller, have you seen those bylaws yet?
You call me David now.
Oh. You think, Eddie Miller? Okay. Have you seen them yet? Okay, well, they exist, and we certainly need to use that as a frame of reference. There's another booklet called Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. Anybody else heard of that? Okay, all right, I have a little, what they call this, a dog-eared copy that I carry with me to many of the meetings that I go to, because sometimes questions come up as to how to make a motion, how to second a motion. I think I heard something earlier during your commission meeting, and I thought I heard you, Chairman Lemon, go back and ask, now, exactly what were you doing or saying there? And so we're going to talk, I'll take a minute to talk about that. And of course, there are vendor contracts and a number of other agreements. So when you talk about the area that you serve, what is your geographic area?
The South
The
Carolina.
entire state. Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And your audience, we refer to them oftentimes as stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? Let's brainstorm on that. You're one in addition to being a commissioner. So you are a parent of a child with special needs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And who else are our stakeholders?
The providers we work with.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Consumers.
And who else? Consumers, yes. And who else who do we get funding from?
Taxpayers.
We get taxpayers, and then, there's that body that sits up there at the
Senate.
state capitol that we also have some accountability to, do we not?
Senate and House.
Okay, all right, we don't want to ignore them as well. Okay, so when you start putting together what you're about, you look at all of these questions. Okay, so there is something called a commissioner governance model. And that model is a model in which you create a vision. And so you have some responsibilities. And when I read in your bylaws what your responsibilities are, let me see if I can get some help with that. Can I get somebody to say what that first one is? What is that first thing that you do? You help with
Securing resources.
securing resources, exactly. And so in the nonprofit world, we would also refer to that as ensuring adequate resources. And a second role that you have as a commissioner has to do with what? Let me get a volunteer. See, this is a tough time to talk after lunch, so give me some more feedback here.
Establishing benchmarks for performance monitoring.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the last one, and let me see if I can get Commissioner, would you help me? Is it Malphus? Would you help me with that? Another role is for you to help what? The commission needs to be responsible to whom?
To the state, or accountable to the stakeholders.
And to the stakeholders, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, so we've already established that we are appointed by the governor, and he gets advice and consent from the Senate. We are operating under the Act of 1993, and that your responsibility, and you don't have to take this literally, Commissioner Thomas, is to debate. Okay, you don't have to take that literally.
No, I think that's very good.
And
And in fact, I want you to say that again. I want you to say that again.
Okay.
What that says, I'm receiving a lot of criticism.
Oh,
It's like this. Yes, debate and it's, yes, sir.
So you don't have to take that literally.
No, yes, we do.
But we do want
We
you,
like what you're saying here.
it's not what I'm saying now, it's written right
It
there in
is
the
written,
code.
yes.
That's right, it is indeed a description. Okay, so there are two responsibilities, or kind of like two broad categories that commissioners, you fall in. One is your role as an individual commissioner, and then your role as a person. okay? They are personal characteristics and expectations. Now, Commissioner Blackman, I'm gonna call on you some too, so don't feel like you're off the hook, all righty? I'll be calling on you as well. Okay, so there are 3 areas that your responsibilities fall in legally. One is referred to as duty of care, and that refers to your competency. The second is duty of loyalty. That's your allegiance to what the agency is about and what the commission does. And the third is obedience, which refers to ethics. And Mary is not here, let me just ask, does the commission have to sign a statement when they come on board? I guess I need you to help me there.
Yeah, we have to get, yeah.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, we have to submit the same, financial thing every year.
And disclosure.
Yes, the disclosure, yep.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
We fall under the state ethics committee.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I don't know if you're doing things wrong, it's not good, but yes. Okay, so the general public is expecting you to be good stewards of their money. Did we not hear Chris give a report on what's going on with money and how is it being spent? And I heard some questions, and not debate, I heard some questions about, well, what does this mean and how is it looking and where are we going? Is that correct? Okay, having said that, then that is the expectation that the public, the consumers, everybody has of you, because it is your eyes that are seeing this, your ears that are hearing this, and your body and your presence that's driving this show here. So you need to show care and competence as commissioners, and of course we want you to be loyal and give your undivided allegiance for the best interest of the department. Now, violating public trust sometimes can result in some unhappy things, like you could be considered violating civil law. You could also be considered violating criminal law. And we've heard that happen, haven't we? We've heard more and more about people doing things and getting their hands caught in the cookie jar, right? Okay, so, but that's not us. That is not us. And so we are not in that position. And because that happens, then it results in a personal and organizational, reputational loss or slide. And it also causes the public not to want to give funding to this agency. And so there are cutbacks and loss in grants, and people say, oh my goodness, you with so-and-so agency. We had such a bad experience with that. But that is not our story, correct? Okay.
Not recently. It depends on what year it is.
Yeah.
It is 2020. It is 2020. It's a good year, is it not?
We have not been in the newspaper this year.
That's right.
Well,
We have
not the same way it was a couple years.
Okay, so when it comes to duty of care, you participate in policy decisions, and you're expected to do 3 things. 1, you're expected to be reasonably informed. 2, you're expected to participate in the decisions. And 3, you're supposed to do so with good faith and with care. So if that is the case, if that is indeed the case, tell me what are some things that you would do to be reasonably informed?
Read the
Read the minutes, absolutely, absolutely. What else? And you can't read them when you get to the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to read them before you get here, all right? Because sometimes it makes a difference when you're rushing and reading it. Of course, some people do speed reading. Is that right, Commissioner?
I guess.
Okay, what else can you do? You can do some research. Okay, so if you see something and you're not quite clear about it, you can make a phone call. Now, some people use commission meetings as an opportunity because they've been home, they've been quarantined, they haven't had a chance to fuss with their wives or their husbands or whatever. And so they use these meetings as an opportunity for them to show up and show out, okay? That's not what your role is as a commission, okay? Is that good? Is that good? Okay. So and of course we don't have that happen. We don't have that happen. So we want to participate in decisions, we want to be involved. Okay, now, there is a job description, and that job description is evolving. And I say it's evolving because I pulled one together for you, and I'll review that with you. It's one of the handouts. But you need to know what is expected of you. You also will find that it's helpful to have an orientation or some kind of a guideline to use as a reference. And you also need to be placed strategically on either a committee or given a meaningful assignment. Does that make sense? Okay. So in order to do that, we need to know a little bit about you, and of course, Mary does. Mary knows you, and of course, Commissioner Lemon knows you as well. But there may be some things that you would like to do that you would need to express and let them both know that these are some areas that you would like to be involved in. Okay, so we have roles of officers. Okay, so everybody, we know who our chair is, and what does he do?
Run things.
He presides over how many meetings? All meetings, correct? Thank you so much. And then we have our vice chair, okay? And what does she do?
Listen.
She listens. Yeah, well, we're hoping everybody's listening. All right, but in addition to that, our vice chair serves in the absence of who? The chair, okay. And then we have the secretary. And what does our secretary do?
The records.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I understand, and I need Mary to kind of help me with this. Elections, according to bylaws, take place in June. Is that, this is a COVID year, so everything. Is that about right?
We had our elections.
Okay, all right. And that officers are elected for 1 year, and they are able to renew that or to run another term. I think we can run up to 3 terms. Is that right?
3, I know it's 3 for the chair. I think the chair may be the only one that has this particular.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Thank goodness.
Now, commissioners oversee the business of the DSN throughout the state and in your respective communities. And you do that by being able to plan and participate in sessions like these where you get information and you are able to engage and to understand and to make informed decisions. We've already talked about how you stay informed, and it is pretty good to know about the money, about where the money is going, where the programs are going, what are the audits saying. And in the case of the state director, she is indeed appointed by this body. You have a responsibility to support her, but you also have a responsibility to assist in her performance review. Now, I think that was what I was hearing when Donna was on the call. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And she was saying that normally you would do it August 15th. Did I hear her say that? And she said it's been extended now to September the 15th.
No, it's usually due on September 15th, it's extended to October 15th.
Okay.
I think she misspoke in the last sentence.
Oh, okay, all right.
There are certain things that were due September. There are certain things that are due September, like the planning document, I think, is due in September.
No, what's due in September is our accountability report. So we also have, they have this new survey that they're doing, so we're gonna have to all figure out what that is. It's a job survey, but that's new this year.
Okay, now, has anyone here been in a job where you were evaluated for your performance? Oh, yes. Okay, so Commissioner Robinson, tell me about that experience.
I worked at a local college
Yes.
in Florence,
Okay.
and we were given a plan, and we sat down with our supervisor and developed a plan of what we hoped to accomplish that year.
Yes.
And then throughout the year, he checked in with me to see where we were. And then at the end of it, then we sat down and decided where I was, what percentage of those things have been accomplished, and I reviewed the score.
Okay, all righty. Anybody else want to volunteer? Oh, yes, go Go ahead, Commissioner David Eddie.
No, ditto to Commissioner Roberts. Mine is similar,
Okay,
and, the evaluator gave me an A plus.
Me too, me
Oh.
too.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you know what's interesting?
I
I
was
find that
evaluated.
interesting. And, Commissioner Hampton, help me with this. My experience with performance evaluation is that they are not on an A, B, C, D, E, F scale. They're on a numeric scale, and that numeric scale then bumps up into different categories, and those categories are something similar to exceeds expectation, meets expectation, or does not meet expectation. Now, I'm not sure, Commissioner, Limo, tell me what your experience has been with performance evaluation.
For me or for the agency?
For
Me.
you, not here, now, we're not gonna talk about that.
It's been a while since I've had one, since I'm the head of my firm,
Okay.
so that's nice, but, yes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I'm only responsible to myself.
So you're the CEO.
Right.
Okay, and because you're the CEO of your firm, you're saying that the only feedback you get is when people quit, okay?
Right,
Or they send you, nasty notes, or
sure,
every now and then you might get some flowers or some candy.
sure.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a wonderful example. Let's talk about that example. So when we have people that work and do the work, and we think that we're doing the right thing, and we don't get any feedback, what happens? We keep doing what we've done before, right? Because we think we got it together, correct? Okay, but it's important to get feedback, and we don't punish people when they have things to say that are not positive, but it does help to shape things as we go forward. Does that make sense? Okay, now, okay, Commissioner Thomas, cross your arms. Tell me what that means. Cross your arms. Good.
Well, I'm balanced.
Better than me on that.
I'm glad you asked me that question. Because if I don't have them balanced with my hands just like this, I could fall to the backwards or worse, fall into forwards.
My goodness. Okay. Tell me your thoughts.
And I'm not finished.
I want to hear some more. I want to hear some more about giving feedback for performance of a key person like a state director or an executive director or CEO.
What does that have to do with my arms being folded?
We're moving on from the arms to something else.
I can't understand you because of that mask, but it's okay. You know, I don't know if you've bothered reading the governor's 18-page executive order. You don't have to have that if you don't want to.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Be patient with me, be
On page
patient. with me.
16, for instance,
Yes,
yes, the 17th line,
yeah,
he specifically addresses that issue.
okay.
Yeah.
Really?
So now that he has addressed that
Boy, it
issue,
sounded good, didn't it?
the news came out that we shouldn't wear the ski masks because they do nothing, okay? You don't wear the ones that come up around your head.
Yeah,
They
I
don't
agree with that.
offer enough protection. Having said that, now that you shared that with us,
Yes.
would you jump in and tell me what your experience has been with performance evaluation, personally, or what you've seen in other places?
I've never gone through one, I've never been part of one.
Okay, all righty, okay. All right,
He owns his own firm, similar to,
okay. So he gets his feedback the same way?
and he also got his feedback from the voters, which is a whole other matter.
That's a different kind of thing that we're talking about evaluation like with her, but.
Okay, so, Commissioner Blackwood, would you weigh in? Have you had any experience with performance reviews?
Yes, I have.
Can you share with us, either your own personal experience or what you're aware of that people do?
I mean, like you said earlier, when you have someone telling you what you do well and what you need to improve, it makes you a better employee, most likely. And so I've always used it as a way to do things differently if I need to, or it would allow it. It also can give you it also provides an opportunity to build your confidence and personally be thanked for what you have done well and what you are doing for the company that you're working for in a positive way. So that's how I view my experiences with evaluations, performance evaluations.
Okay, all righty. Now, a lot of times, we don't use the term evaluation because it's so hard. We refer to it as performance reviews or performance evaluations so that we discern from the person the difference between the job that they do and how we feel about them. But as you both know, South Carolina is a right to work state, and you can just come in one day and not look right, correct? And that could be a cause for termination, okay? So we are hopeful that we are not going to make performance judgments on the way a person looks or something that, they have just done that particular day. Okay, so we also want to avoid conflicts of interest, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail. And we need to look by abiding our bylaws. We also have a responsibility to speak out on behalf of the agency and the commission. And we do that, of course, by doing some advocacy. And then, of course, we talked a little bit about, in addition to the state director, we also look at the director of internal audit. Is that correct, Mary? That this board is responsible for, and that person has a name?
Yeah, Kevin, that he reports information directly to them.
Okay.
But administratively, I supervise.
Okay. And we also look at reporting strategic partners. Now, in your handouts, and I'm going to apologize to Commissioner Lockwood that I don't have one for her, but she will get one. There is a hot pink self-evaluation form that you got as one of the handouts. Would you take a moment and rate this commission? Nobody's going to see your answers. Just go through that quickly. There are 14 choices, and the options are very good, good, average, fair, or poor. You're not putting a number in, you're putting an X or a check mark, okay? Just for the heck of it, let's just sort of see what how you rate this commission. I know it's the best, but let's use some factors. And those that don't apply, put an NA, or if you don't know, a DK. DK for don't know, NA for not after.
I apologize, I've lost my pen.
You've lost your pen. Okay, I think you might be able to.
I'm sorry.
Now, this is not a test that you're going to be graded for, or do you have to turn it in? So if you need to doodle, Commissioner Thomas, go ahead. When you're almost done, if you look up, I'll know that you're almost there. Okay. Again, I don't feel like you're rushed. This is your document to keep. But I am going to ask you some silly questions. You ready? Of these 14 measures that have been suggested here to how you evaluate this body, I would like to know how many of you ranked any of those 14 in that last category called poor. See, anybody ranked a poor? All right. How how many of you ranked any of the 14 variables as fair? Okay, all right. I got 2 that said fair. Okay, and then how many of you ranked at least one of the categories as very good? Okay, all right. So, Mr. Chair, which one do you want to do? Let's do the fair one first?
Sure.
Let me hear some fairs. Get them out. Who ranked it? Which one?
The commission regularly monitors and evaluates progress towards strategic goals and progress.
Okay, and that is
Number 10.
Number 9.
Number
Okay.
10.
Number 10.
I have that one as well.
Okay, all righty. Anybody else?
And I'll just, I think that's really, we have a strategic plan, we have a 5-week. And, you know, I think too much of a lot of our focus, not too much, but a lot of focus obviously is on day-to-day emergencies. And, you know, one thing that's always difficult for us is relating back to where the strategic goals are.
What the
Always,
big
you know,
plan
it's
is.
like, yeah, the big picture, how it fits into the big picture.
In coordination, I did number 4 because like commission has clear goals, actions resulting from the relevant and realistic strategic planning. I don't know about that. So I couldn't really, I just put fair because I really just didn't know.
Okay, so I may be hearing a need at some point to do some strategic planning and to just step back from the crises. You just have to close the door, turn the cameras off, and take care of it. Okay, all righty. What about somebody who listed a very good? Let me hear what came up very good. Which one of yours came up very
I
good?
have most of them very good.
Okay, all right.
I'm very optimistic.
Okay,
I had very good under most of the first 2. I think. It's
Okay.
good about that.
all righty.
I'm with David.
You with David. Okay, David hadn't said yet. Commissioner Miller, we're gonna have some fun in here today.
What were you referring to, number 4, though, specifically?
Number 4 is what you've listed as very
I
good.
said very good.
You said 4 as very good, okay.
And let me tell you why.
All right, let me
All right,
hear.
all right, the reason is, I think maybe I originally spent months ago a lot of time on the website.
Yes,
And I think the website lays out exactly kind of what the agency is all about, who it serves.
okay,
And now, you might disagree with how it's being implemented. I mean, that would be a daily function, but as far as laying out reality, it's just so much. It's a lot of stuff.
yeah,
But I went down the list and I was going back and forth and I had staff meeting with me about it. So from sort of my very limited perspective, it's not as deep as what Gary's is.
okay,
So, but just from my limited perspective, I was very pleased at understanding kind of the scope and what the agency was all about.
okay. So the website is well done.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of information.
Good information.
And you need to kind of delve into it
Yep.
to appreciate where it talks about some of the loftier goals, right?
Yeah, I would say that is very accurate, and the specified goals and what we're doing to try to meet those. So I had no problem with that end of things, and
Okay.
so I gave it a very good, I stand to be corrected, but as best I could tell, I liked it. I
Okay.
even said so in the first meeting, that this
Okay.
was really helpful and
Great.
helped me give direction for general policy and how it's being accomplished and
Okay.
all that,
Great.
okay?
Now, Commissioner Malthus, you said number 1 was very good for you, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Anybody else say that for number 1? Okay, all righty. So, my dual Commissioner, Miller thought that was helpful too. Is that right?
That's why I said I was with Commissioner Thomas.
Oh, no, he didn't say it was very good for him.
Dual Dave here. We're together lockstep. Lockstep.
I think you did a good job at monitoring the funding goals and monitoring the income and knowing where we're at with that. I think that was about
Okay, and that was number
7.
7.
I had 6 and 7.
6 and 7,
They kind of
okay.
both went together.
Okay, great. Okay, well, again, I will make sure that I ask the staff if they will help me, Ms. Elaine, and she'll help me with getting that evaluation sent to you, Commissioner Blackwood. Okay, now, having said that, did you see what we just did? We did a review, an assessment on what?
The commission.
On the commission. And we came up with some ideas, right? But we had kind of like a guideline that we followed. And the significance of being able to do that is that it allows you to say that, yes, we are good, but there are probably some things we can do better. And the best people to tell you what you can do better is you, okay? You are the ones, because you can make something happen with it. And when we were talking about doing the performance review of the state director, it's kind of in the same, it is the same concept, is that she does a great job at what she does, but there just may be a couple of things that she could tweak and she could do better, or that she could do better with some help, with some funding, with some staff. And so that's why this part about doing an annual performance review is so very important. So my CEOs, and you are doing a great job. And sometimes your CPA says that if you're making a profit, that you're doing well. But there may be some other things that you could find out about yourself if there were some persons who'd be willing to give feedback. And I know I've worked in organizations where I've given feedback and it was not well received, right? Okay, you said something, and the next thing you know, you were being redirected somewhere else. Okay, so and then after you say something more than one time, 2, 3, 4 times, and you say, you know, it'd be a good idea if we were to do X, Y, and Z, and nobody says anything, does anything. Then after a while, most people just stop doing what? Stop talking. They just say, okay, that's fine. That's what you want to do. But then sometimes an audit comes along and they said, you know what, if you had just done this, this, and this, you would have eliminated your risk factors. And then somebody will say, you know what, that Emma, she's been saying that all along. Okay? So, any questions? All righty, so let's talk.
If you did an evaluation with somebody very quickly, and they, in the last, let's say you've done one for a couple of years, and you gave them the similar things for the last couple of years they needed to improve on, and you didn't see where they had, you could explain to the person where they had not improved. What would you recommend you do other than just say sayonara because you can't seem to do what you need to do? How would you, since you have a PhD and all this sort of thing?
Oh, I don't have a PhD, but thank you. I did teach at the university.
Anyways,
14
so
years.
what would your general summary be of that? How would you handle such a thing?
Well, I can tell you what I would do, but I would like to defer to some other people. So let me just start with what I would do. When I see a person who is not performing at potential, I realize that it's generally one of 3 things going on with that person. One is that they don't understand what needs to be done. Okay, so I've said it to them, but it didn't mean anything. Saying to me that my performance needs to be improved does not help my performance. But if you say to me that I need you to submit timely reports of your whatever, then that makes a difference. You see what I'm saying? You're very specific, very specific. I found that when a person does not improve, it's generally because they don't understand. The second, that's the high road. Let me find out from some of the other people who do evaluations as well. That's the high road, okay? The next part about it is sometimes they can't do better or do what you're asking to do is because they lack the skill set and or the resources. That means that what you're asking them to do requires them to be able to have some skill sets in, let's just say, in written communication, and they are just not that good at it. They have broken language, and broken language is becoming through more and more so in text messages and in emails and, other kinds of communications. Or they may not have the resources because it takes money to sometimes do some of the things that are being asked. And then the third category is because they don't care. Right?
Okay, all right.
All righty, and sometimes when people don't care, they don't perform, and they want you to fire them, okay? And they want you
Yeah,
to
they
give them
say it
that
right.
pleasure, okay? And if you fire a person, what's the first thing that they do?
Fire
When they,
them.
when they leave your office, they pretty much go straight, don't they? That's right, that's right. Well, unemployment was pretty good there for a while, but come July 30, was it August? No, July 31st. July 31st is when the $600 additional bonus ended, okay? So that makes a difference. Now, did I capture that? Is that?
Go ahead, sorry, I didn't, go ahead.
Is that pretty accurate? Okay. All right, so this commission is structured with officers, and we know what the 3 officers are. We already talked about them. Come on, somebody help me out.
Chairman, Vice Chairman,
Chair, Vice Chair, and Secretary.
Our secretary is on TV.
Okay, all righty.
Yes, she is. She's right there.
But you see,
More importantly, she's on vacation.
she's present and
She's
accountable.
actually on vacation, which shows her dedication to our commission. That's right.
Commissioner Blackwood, do you need to speak up, or are you okay?
No, I am just laughing, and I think my duty of care responsibility is taken care of by this my attendance today.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so I think she said, take that, guys.
That's a throwback.
Okay.
Comment on
All
your.
righty. Your bylaws pretty much say that you have standing committees and you have special or ad hoc committees. And at this point, I understand that there are no special committees, but you have an executive committee that pretty much functions as a committee of the whole, because you include everyone. You have a finance and audit, a legislative committee, and a policy committee. And I thought I heard some reports during the commission meeting from some of them. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. So you need a quorum. I heard that discussion this morning. Can somebody tell me what a quorum is? If you have 7 commissioners, how many does it take to make a quorum? 4, okay? All right. So when 4 are gathered, you are considered official and you can transact business. Now, it's good to have an agenda. I added the E term called an effective agenda. An effective agenda not only has where the meeting is, when it starts, it may have an end time on it, it says who's responsible, and some agendas actually have action items on the left side. So you can say this is to be approved, to be adopted. This one needs to be for information only, okay? And then, of course, that's an obvious question. The issue, of course, is maintaining official records. But here's the question that's important. Why are minutes needed? Why do you need minutes of a meeting?
So you can go back and look after the fact, see what we did.
It becomes a historical
Sometimes
record?
sometimes it's a couple of years after we voted on something, we gotta go back and look and see what exactly.
Absolutely. There's this thing called institutional memory. Anybody know about that? Institutional memory, that somebody remembers that 10 years ago, we voted to do such and such. But then nobody else can remember it, and so your minutes does that. But what else do our minutes used for?
Comply with the law, in our case, with the FOIA Act.
It does, exactly. And the last thing it does is that it's a part of the audit, okay? When the audit is done, the minutes are needed. Okay, so we completed talking about duty of loyalty, duty of care, we're now gonna talk about duty of loyalty, okay? Now this means that you're gonna act in the best interest of who?
Commission.
The commission, the DDSN commission. This is not about being self-serving or about the interest of another entity or person. So that's when we come to the subject, oftentimes referred to as COI. What is COI? Conflict of interest. conflict of interest, and we talk about confidentiality, because everything we talk about is not necessarily to be repeated when you go to church or you go to other meetings. So we understand that we all have multiple interests. We have our personal interests, we have families and friends, we have professional interests, and we have other volunteer commitments. And when you live in a smaller community, right? A smaller community, we're not going to pick on any one community here, but when you live in a smaller community, when you go to get your coffee, and you wouldn't be going to Starbucks in a smaller community, right? So when you go to your coffee to get coffee in McDonald's, and this was before COVID, and you're having a conversation either on your cell phone or to somebody you know in there, and you're having a conversation about something that's going on with the commission, you know what? That information easily gets brought back to somebody else, okay? I have a daughter from Columbia who has a boyfriend who lives in a small town, and he was working at one job, and he had an opportunity to go interview at another job, and so he went to the other job and interviewed. Okay, you all know the story. What happened? Go ahead.
Before he got back to his office, they already knew.
They already knew. And what else happened? They fired him. Okay, how about that? And could they get away with it? Absolutely. And why? Right to work state. Right to work state. Is he supposed to be mad? No. I told him, when one door closes, another one opens. Okay, so how do we prevent ourselves from getting caught up in a conflict of interest? Let's be clear. A conflict of interest is a legal term, isn't it? It doesn't mean, I called people up and I said, I would like for you to attend, this meeting, this neighborhood meeting, on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And the first thing that came out of their mouth is, I have a conflict of interest. Hold up. Let me be clear what you're saying. A conflict of interest doesn't mean that you have a conflict with the meeting. It means that, like a conflict with another engagement or another activity, it means that you have a vested interest in something that's about to take place. So, I have some sample statements here. Can somebody give me an example of a conflict of interest, a real one?
I can give you one.
Oh, good, thank you, Commissioner Rowe.
My daughter was receiving benefits from DSN,
Yes,
and they were discussing her HASKI waiver,
okay,
and I was sitting on the board. I had to step out while they took that vote.
correct.
And
That's a perfect example.
before I could, so I had to be.
Okay. And so in that case, you not only did not vote on it, but you disclosed that you had that conflict and you removed yourself from the room. So it's generally recorded, Mr. Chairman, isn't it? When there is a conflict of interest. That's a wonderful example. Okay, all right, I need some of my seasoned persons here to give me another example of conflict of interest. Madam Secretary, Commissioner Blackwood, do you have an example of another conflict of interest that you've heard, that you know about, that you've seen, witnessed, been a part of?
I'm sure I've seen some, and been a part of a few, maybe. But I cannot think of a great example to share right second. Sorry.
You would have to recuse yourself if there was something the commission was voting on that happened to be something you had a pecuniary interest in. So obviously you would disclose it, and you would or just recuse yourself and not vote on the issue. So you would abstain. So the idea then of disclosure and abstaining is a big deal in anything that affected you.
Right.
In any kind of way.
And conflicts of interest generally fall into two categories. One is finances or funding, and the other is personnel. Those are generally the two areas where there are conflicts of interest that develop. And when they develop, it is important that you not just recuse yourself, but also that you disclose why you are recusing yourself. And you generally should leave the room, okay? And I want to talk just a little bit about that, is that you not only disclose, and I'm not talking about taking your clothes off, Commissioner Miller,
Whoa.
okay? Not disclose.
Go right over there.
That you disclose that you have a conflict of interest, and you make that well known to the chair, because sometimes you may not know in advance. If you know in advance, you have a responsibility to let him know, as well as the state director know, that you have a conflict. And that, again, we do suggest that you abstain. And here are some sensitive areas: direct service, personnel, grants, or applying for or spending of money. Let me call on our state director. Is there anything else that tends to come up with the board that could be considered a conflict of interest?
No, I think that, and I know this came up when I was in York, as far as all the boards and commissions up there. And that if, again, if there's anything that they're talking about where you have a business, so say, if we're talking about these grants for all this transportation and you run a transportation company, that would be not something that you would want to, or if you had someone who would benefit, like your wife or a close relative would benefit from that.
That's exactly.
I think that was going on, and I remember New York, they had to do all those disclosures because of that issue.
Exactly.
Yeah, the property use. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's,
You can own property,
right.
and DDSN may be trying to invest or purchase or build on or
just use,
or
just
use.
rent, just rent from.
That's right. Now, when we say disclose and the person leaves the room, generally that's recommended that you leave the room, and the commission still votes to go forward with that action. That's different than you not saying anything and it happens and we find out later. Okay, so remember that the disclosure part of it, and you don't have to make it, all, hands waving and everything and falling down on the floor and gnashing teeth and all of that. You just need to, Mr. Chairman, I believe I have a conflict of interest. And then he'll say, state your conflict. And then you say it at that point. And then with the help of our state director, Mary, then the decision would be made and you would be asked to step out. So don't get mad now, okay? Don't get mad, Brother Thomas. Okay, so we talked about goods board, I want to say commission, please forgive me for not changing this one. Good commission and staff relations. Yes. Okay, so you are a commission, correct? And you have leadership in the commission. You have a state director. And the state director is very nice to you all, and she is very kind and very accommodating. But technically, the state director reports to the commission chair. And the commission chair then, of course, shares her and makes her available, to things that you need and request. But when it comes to all the other staff, where do they fit into the schema? Are we going to call on Chairman Lemel to be supervising? Let's pick on Chris back there and tell him that he needs him to run this report and do this and do that and get back with him by 5 o'clock this afternoon? Is that how it's supposed to happen? Okay, all right. Okay. So when it comes, let's be clear that the commission has the access to the state director, and generally the request to the state director should go through the chair.
And that's, that was something we basically had some debate on of the exact nature of how we do that effectively. Because there are times when it's easier if I've got a finance question to go to Chris and say, hey, Chris, what's going on with this?
Right.
The issue that we've had in the past has been when, again, trying to issue orders to staff as opposed to asking for information has been a big problem in the past. Or when something has been requested and this, the executive director doesn't provide it, then people go to, do the end run around the executive director. I mean, these are problems we've had in the past,
Okay.
not really currently.
But currently,
but the-
everybody's welcome to talk to the staff. And if it's, we're all at this, I told the staff, if there's something that you can't get to, just let me know, and I'll buy you some time. But basically because of other workloads, but that feeling of animosity is not the same as it was, and using staff time, for one's own kind of agenda, that's not present at this time. So there's a real big difference. Personalities are personalities, and all boards and all employees are just people. When it comes down to it.
So what you've asked me is, how should it be? The way it should be would be to go to the state director. What the state director has says that she's okay when you just have a quick question to go directly to that person. I like to do emails because there's a paper trail, okay? I guess that, I'm not an accountant, Chris, but I like that paper trail. So when you do ask something of a staff person, then you could very well copy Mary on that, just so that she knows the request is coming, okay? Or the request has been made.
But what you said originally was that our request should come from the chairman to the state director. So if any of the rest of us have a question,
Right.
we should send it to the chairman and then.
Well,
him send it to the state director?
what the state director said is that she's comfortable
With us.
with you going directly
Okay.
to the person that you need, as long as we're not talking about asking that person to do a cost analysis
Yeah.
for a particular location that would take, hours of time and preparation, to present, okay? So the answer to that question is yes, you can. Okay, let me go through duty of obedience, and I'm not going, I want to talk about ethics, I want to talk about FOIA, and when I talk about liability, okay? So when we talk about ethics, you as a commissioner come to the table striving for these kinds of degrees of ethics. So we're going to say that when the governor appointed you, that we're going to operate on the premise that everybody has these kinds of characteristics, okay? These are your personal characteristics, that you're responsible, you believe in inclusion. We're going to try to avoid, as a commission, these kinds of things. And let me just pick on one or two of them. Nepotism, what is that?
Favoring family members.
Family members, hiring family members, okay? Cronyism, hiring their friends. Those are your friends, okay? All right. And, fraud usually means that you have deceived us in some kind of way. You've turned in an expense report, for something that you never got, didn't want, or didn't have, okay? And then the misuse of position. I know this group would not be about that, right? You wouldn't be flexing your muscles, telling everybody who you are and where they can go, correct?
I'm not gonna throw my cards away. I don't know what you're getting to.
You do? What am I doing?
No, I got my business cards and it's got commissioner on it, and I'm not throwing those away. Keeping my cards.
Commissioner, we want you to have a car. We want you to have a car. In fact, everybody should have a car.
Everybody should have a car.
Everybody should have a car. But it's how you use your car, okay? It's how you use your car, okay? All right. Now, the Freedom of Information Act is intended, as you all know, to maximize citizen participation in the process and decision-making. Now, when we say no action is taken in the executive session, what does that mean?
You can't vote.
So you have to vote to go into executive session, correct? Do that publicly. Then you go into executive session and then you talk about it and you make some recommendations and you decide on an action, but you don't vote on it. Don't vote on it. And then you come out of executive session and then do what? Take action.
Okay.
You take the action when you come out of that, okay? You have to give proper notice. Did I hear the secretary reading the proper notice? Just proper notice for all of the meetings that this commission has taken. And if you need to make changes to the agenda, can you do it at the meeting, during the meeting, while the meeting's going on? No, gotta wait how long?
24 hours.
24 hours in advance of the meeting to make changes to the agenda, okay?
And we have amended little things of it. I mean.
Little things are okay.
We said we were gonna have a presentation on this person can't make it, so we're gonna
Yes,
change it.
and that's
or-
acceptable.
Or we're gonna move this item up because this
Right.
person has to be here at 12:15 and things like that.
And that's
That's
not a
acceptable,
problem.
okay.
But,
But substantive changes on.
It's substantive changes, exactly. Want to clarify that. So if we're talking about bringing in another presentation after I finish, then that would be a violation. Okay, so any questions? Do you want me to go into any more detail on that? Okay. The public is counting on you to protect them, to value what the commission is about and its purpose, and to adhere to what you have been appointed to do. There are 3 things that we talked about: duty of care, obedience, and loyalty. And it pretty much boils down to simply doing the right thing and doing good. Doing right and doing good. Not meaning to be doing right, but doing the right thing. There's a quote from Benjamin Mays, who is a South Carolinian, and of course he is an educator and a distinguished gentleman. And he said, "It must be borne in mind that tragedy of life didn't lie in reaching your goal, but it lied in having no goal to reach." He said it was the calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it's also a calamity not to ever dream. And that's kind of what you've been talking about too, Commissioner Lemon, where you talked about taking time to do some strategic planning. It's not a disaster to be unable to capture your ideal, but it is a disaster to have no ideal to capture. It's not a disgrace not to reach for the stars, but it's a disgrace not to have no stars to reach for. Not failure, but low aim is a sin. And that's Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. Questions? Comments?
Barry, was there anything else you wanted to FYI?
Well, I just wanted to state that, I wanted to say that I think, and I would ask what you thought, if the definition of a meeting, in the definition of a meeting for the freedom of information act, we're not having a meeting if less than 3 people are discussing something, if we have a 6 or 7 member commission, right?
That's almost right, but before assuming that it's correct, completely correct, okay? Your commission is 7 members, 7 commissioners.
Right, currently it's 6, but it wouldn't affect 6 or 7.
Okay, well, let's take 6, if we can do 6, okay? So currently you have 6 commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
When you need to conduct business, official business, you need how many?
We need a majority.
4.
4.
You need a quorum.
Right.
So it is a quorum that conducts business. If it is less than a quorum, then it is 3 commissioners sharing information and talking.
Correct.
It is not a quorum.
Correct.
Okay? And so it is when you reach that 4th person that you then are considered a meeting, an official meeting to conduct business.
Right, and other than that, it's not.
Right, less than that is not.
Right.
Now, if the 3 of you talk business, then just know it's still unofficial.
Right.
It's just a conversation.
No determination, it's just discussing that.
That's right. And that's where Freedom of Information Act comes in.
That's the definition of a meeting, right?
Right. A meeting is a convening of a body to conduct business with the quorum having been met. That is a meeting, okay? When it's less than a quorum, it's a gathering, okay? Or informal meeting. But if you use the term meeting, just like we talked about conflict of interest, that's an official term. You're going to say the commission is meeting. If you are meeting, then FOIA says, well, where is it? Let me see it. And when a request comes in for through FOIA, it generally comes to the agency and I believe goes to legal. Does that sound right, Mary?
It would go to our legal department, right?
Yeah.
It's like-
Yes, it would generally go to legal. It would generally go to legal. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I have another handout that I'm just going to reference, and it is a goal handout. It says basic responsibilities of the commission. It's a front and back document. It's 10 pages. And I hope that you can appreciate that that's kind of the summary of what we talked about, roles and responsibilities. The last sheet is the blue sheet. And if you would you take a moment to give me some feedback? Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Moore, this is the way I do get better. So let me have it. It doesn't have your name on it. You see that? It doesn't have your name on it. And if you would, please give me some feedback. And I want you, if you don't mind, fold it. Long way, this way. And then I can't tell who wrote it. Thank you. Okay, so while you're filling that out, I'm going to just show my last slide. And I would like to thank Mary and Chris for inviting me to assist you in growing as a commission. And I'll take off my shield, Commissioner, and go back to what the governor said. I know he said you don't have to wear anything, but I'm going to wear something.
And, are any more questions?
Madam State Director, this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Have
Thank you,
all
Ms.
fives on it, it's Ed. If it have ones, it's David.
Is he still in the room? Did he hear that?
Ed's back.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. We appreciate you being here today for us.
Very, very complicated.
Do you need to take a 2-minute break before Chris gets started?
I'd like to, yeah.
Okay.
I gotta look down because you can't see me down with these masks on.
I know,
I have missed a stare before.
I'll be honest with you, I've never been more grateful than I surgeons. They just did. Did I?
Oh, yeah.
I see 2020 distance, but.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you mean because of this issue we were Foxa?
Right, yeah. That's it's like if you,
You had the laser surgery.
yeah, I love it.
And you are happy you did it?
It is the best thing it is the best thing I ever did for myself.
It was the best thing I ever did too. I absolutely love mine. I couldn't see anything.
Oh,
I
my
had it
baby,
done.
mine was terrible.
And now I've got glasses back on. So.
Yeah, well, it's different because you gotta
happened
read.
to me?
I mean, that's just the fact that it was.
Mine has stayed, I've had mine for about 16 years now.
Yeah.
And I'm still seeing 2020.
My wife had hers, and it's about 18 years for her, and she's still at 2010.
I'm good for distance is the upper stuff.
Thank you very much.
He is amazing.
Yes, great.
Or
You know, we're with this whole thing, we're also still broadcasting. So, let's stay with laser surgery and not get into other surgery. This next section that I have on here was, we first saw funding fundamentals to talk about bands, and well, we don't have much time. And as we know, this funding system we have is extremely complicated because it really hasn't been touched in so many years. But as we move towards that road for fee-for-service, and I know that uncertainty breeds fear.
Yeah.
And that fear pushes people to do and say things that they probably would not ordinarily have done or said. So we want to always be as transparent as possible. Now, we know the commission said you're going to flip what we call the Band Bs and Is. Band Bs are in the IDRD waiver for community services. So if you're in band like G and H, those are residential services. Still within the IDRD waiver, but they get that extra residential piece in there. So if you're a band B, respite, PCA, nursing, day programs, which is the bigger one for that. And then we also have the CS waiver. So that's the band I, and that's a capped waiver, and it's all community services, no residential component to it. So when we look forward to our future road of saying we're going to go to, quote, fee for service, right now, the only two bands that we are looking at are the band Bs and the band Is. So I had asked Chris to kind of put us together so we all understand that this is not like walking over to a wall thing and turning on a light switch and turning off a light switch. It's much more complicated than that. And it needs to take into account keeping our provider community whole, because if they are not whole, then our individuals lose services. Again, I am our individual centric. I am worried about our folks out there. To take care of our folks, we have a provider network that we also have to be mindful of. So to that end, we are doing analysis of the different band Bs. I've had my back to you, I apologize, Robin. The band Bs and the band Is, we have to do the analysis on how it affects the financial manager who's been holding that band all this time. So that if they're using part of that band to help them with other programs, we have to see how we can help them understand how to manage those other programs without maybe using a ton of the money that's sitting out in those other bands. So it's not as simple as saying, time to flip that switch and we're going to fee for service for band Bs and Is. And I know that we have put some time frames around them, but I want you to look at this list and see what we are going to have to get in order. And we're not just talking, can we process the bills through downstairs? We're talking policies, procedures, manuals, the whole 9 yards. So I asked Chris to kind of put that together because Chris is really good with lists. He puts together excellent lists because we have a meeting, he's always got a 15-line list for us to go over items. And I want you to and then we need to go through, I think we'll take each topic. We're working on everything simultaneously, but you have to understand, then we have to put these dominoes in the right order so that when we say it's time to go and we actually do set a deadline, we know that these dominoes are going to fall the way they're supposed to fall to make people be able to be successful in that fee-for-service world. Because if the providers aren't successful in that fee-for-service world, that means less choice and opportunity for our individuals out there too. So with that, I'm going to let Chris start, okay?
Mary, can I,
Yes.
Yes.
I just have a question about what you were just saying.
Already?
So, what was the last state to go to fee for service that you know of?
January 1st.
Last state, the state.
What state?
The last state.
Oh gosh, Lord, I don't know. I can't answer that question off the top of my head. And I don't want to venture a guess.
The easier question, Robin, maybe is what other state has a band system
Yeah,
like us?
that isn't fee for service.
Yeah, that's
none. There's
right.
no state that has a fee for
They're all
service.
fee for service.
I mean,
I don't think-
fee for service.
I don't think any other state has the legacy financial system of a band system ever. Because we were set up unique from the outset.
Right.
So
I just was
And we never
curious.
changed.
I was just curious, if a state had to go through this pretty, within the last few years, what we're going through, that we could learn from some of the things they've done. So that's why I ask.
It's kind of hard to look at another state and say, because of all the different policies, procedures, the way we have things set up are very unique to what we do.
I know it won't be exactly the same, but there might be a few.
Right. Well, we have been in contact with Georgia. One of the big things that we're having issues with is just the residential program as far as going for service, and how do we set rates for people when acuity is such an important part of the rate setting system, and yet we don't have we don't use like a universal assessment tool We don't have one. So I know Georgia went through all this machinations to get themselves a good universal assessment tool or tools. I think there's more than one. So we are looking at that as far as to set acuity for our individuals, which I think is extremely important. I don't know how we set rates for things people need if we don't have a tool that tells us what they need. So that's something we have to work on, but that's in the wheelhouse. So this is just, and we're not talking right now about going full bore fee for service as far as the residential stuff is going. We're still going to keep those in those bands. This is just the at-home services that have discrete prices on them.
This is everything except.
Residential. And most of it already is fee for service, if you think about it. Because as far as the financial managers right now are holding these bands, but the providers of things like PCA, well, they're not boards. They're just providers that are enrolled in Medicaid. And so when you provide an hour of PCA, you get paid for an hour of PCA. But we send out all that person's budget to the boards right now. So that's why we are looking right now. And the boards are the financial managers. So when I use the term financial manager, and I use the term board, it's kind of interchangeable. True? They're the financial managers. They've been given the entire budget, not the entire band amount for that individual. Sometimes people need that entire band amount and more. So the liability is also sitting out there with that financial manager. So we're going to be taking on that liability too. But for quite a few people, the number is underneath what that budget is. So that's where we are. But we can try to find that, Robin. I just don't think anybody's there. And the other thing is most of the folks are Medicaid agencies too. So they do fee for service for everybody.
Well, I think at the center of your question, Robin, when it comes to what you're asking, it's not really the conversion to fee for service. It's more the rate setting and the service delivery definitions. And we are looking at other states and talking to Medicaid and other experts, subject matter experts and so forth when it comes to that.
We've also, I don't know if you can hear me, we've also asked for technical assistance through CMS's technical assistance program. And what is it, New Edition? I can't remember because it's
the boy band.
Boy band.
New Edition.
The name of the company is New Edition. It's actually an arm of the National Association for State Developmental Disability Directors. So it's our national organization who's providing technical assistance as we start to look at our waiver definitions and trying to pull in some of that national perspective to make sure that we're doing we're making the service array correct for our individuals that are out there.
All right, so this only goes to 2:15 apparently. We got about 13 minutes. I like to be sensitive to people's time, especially when you're volunteers. First thing I want to do is just kind of give you a brief history of the band system. When I started in this industry, we had individualized negotiated budgets for every single house in the state. So in Lawrence, which is where I got my start in this industry, we had, let's say 12 homes, and every year I'd negotiate my budget with DDSN. So every house had its own budget, its own staffing pattern, everything. DDSN came up with this great idea of band systems and the capitated funding system. They took all the money that was in the state at that point and just pulled it into one big old huge pot and then split it out into 5 bands, which was A, B, C, D, and E, I guess, back then, right? Or no, anyways, it's A, B, G, F. It was weird. But anyways, so we're up to like 11 bands or something now. The point you need to know is that this is a legacy system that got its infancy with that type of structure, and the only increases we've gotten to our band system over the years is legislative increases for pay raises and things of that nature. So when they first came up with this, they were going to do what's called rebasing every 3 years, and we have never rebased that I'm aware of. What rebasing looks like is basically redoing a market study and see what costs are running, and also look at enrollment and different needs. And and redoing the whole entire calculation of the band system. That to my knowledge has never ever been done. But that was, the bill of goods we were sold when it was implemented. So the reason you need to know that is because you got to really understand what the costs are out in the system. And the reason you need to understand that is because as we unravel these bands, they're connected at the hip. Okay, so when we fund a provider, they get a contract that's comprised of all the individuals they serve and the bands that they're in that we've assigned them to, and that aggregates into what's called their capitated contract. That money they can spread wherever they want in their programs. They can put extra money, if they need money in residential, they can take money from Band Bs and put it in residential. If they need more money in day program, they move it wherever they want. We don't even control that. They don't have to tell us. There's no approvals, nothing. So then the reason that's relevant is if we're going to reach in and grab just 2 of these out of 11 and undo them, you got to think those providers are used to getting those bands and using those monies where they need them most. And so when I did an analysis and we determined we have $10 million in these bands based on 2019 numbers, that's providers that are making money, if you will, on those 2 bands, and they're having to use it elsewhere in their programs. And that's why they're really, really nervous, because if we say, all right, providers, we're going to take B's and I's back, they're going to lose $10 million in revenue based on 19's numbers. And they're going to have issues. They're really concerned about that. So you might ask, well, why are you giving me all this residential information in here? We just said we're not unraveling residential. Well, the problem is, as you unravel B's and I's, it forces you to start looking at day program and residential, because what we've been able to do, and when I say been able to do, this is a negative term, not a positive term. We've been able to run on these old rates without renegotiating with Medicaid what the actual rate needs are. I mean, the analysis we've done, we have about $20 million in surplus residential costs in the system right now, and the only way we can get away with that is we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're taking money from this pocket, putting it in the other, and that's the only way. And so as a result, our residential rates have atrophied, and we've got to work with Medicaid to get that fixed. So what I want to do is just give you some of our considerations that you need to be aware of as we talk about the unraveling of B's and I's, and even, like, why couldn't we get it done in July? And if we have to delay it from October, what gives? It sounds easy. So I will say, I've been in this industry 30 years, either as an auditor or as a finance director or consultant. I thought the B's and I flip would be a lot easier than it's actually going to be. So until I got in under the hood, started talking to the experts in here that are outside of finance, and realizing all the other intricacies, including IT, for example, information systems, you don't realize everything that's involved. So it's a lot. So let's just go through this real quick. I mean, one thing is our HHS contracts now, as they are established, are worded and based on us having bands. And so there's a need to realign some of that language to get in line with fee for service. We have lots of contracts with HHS. For example, we have 3 contracts for our 3 waivers. We used to have the PDD waiver, but we don't have that one anymore. If you look at the rates that are in these 3 waiver programs, they're not the same rate for the same service. So right here, we're talking about supported employment. This is us sending a job coach out to somebody at Publix or Burger King and helping them get a job and making sure they're successful. If they're a head and spinal cord injured consumer, which we just converted to 15-minute units, that's a national code transition we just went through here at DDSN. Previously, it was an hour unit. So if you want to focus on the hour unit, $20.43 versus $65.93 versus $87.80. Now that's a mess. And we're trying to identify all these rate issues and get them fixed. And support employment's not the only one that we have this problem with. The other issue we have is we have one residential rate, but then we have A through G that we fund with that one rate. Now that rate's an old rate, it's not the current. These rates, I had to grab this quickly. I was working on this morning, so I had all this stuff available for 19. So this is not our fiscal 20 or 21 rates, but they basically moved together. So 187.66, you know, if someone's in CTH 1, you know, we're making $110 every day that they're billing. But if they're in a CTH 2 band H, we're losing, which most of our people are in if you look at the table below, most of our units are in CTH 2, 930,000 units for fiscal year 19. We lost $28.57 for every day somebody's present. That means we had to kick in state dollars. When we say we have a revenue problem in our board meetings, this is kind of an example. And so what Mary's wanting to get us to, and what she just spoke to, is we need to somehow get out of this one rate for residential and have it tied to needs and placements and difficulty of care and assessments. If you look at our total residential, we're upside down, and this is just, I said 20 million earlier, this is just the residential component of residential. Don't forget these people also go to the day program. They also have waiver services, or they may have job coach. This is simply the residential component that I'm looking at. But we lost $11 million, rough numbers, last fiscal year 19, providing residential services. So we have to address that as an agency. Another issue we're running into with COVID, right now we pay our providers $27.50 for a half-day unit of day program. We bill $31.29 to Medicaid. That's called a rate split. The difference between those two numbers is how we're supposed to earn our administrative cost. But due to how low of attendance that folks are running, we're actually upside down on that. We're losing money in day program as well. That split is not adequate to cover our admin or the vacancy rate that we're paying, because we continue to pay our providers whether someone's in their day program or not, but we cannot bill it. We are unable to bill those days. That is why we had to do the recoupment back in May, because we're putting, you know, what equals $27.50 a half day for all these people in the provider pocket, but nobody's attending, and we can't bill a single thing. So we're just, the state dollars are just, you can hear the sucking sound as those state dollars leave our checking account. So we need to look at difficulty of care. So that's a barrier right now, because if we reopen, even if we pass through the full 31.29 that we get and don't split rates with them anymore, we still think it's not going to be adequate with the social distancing mandates and folks needing to travel in smaller packs. You know, you can't put 8 people in a 15-passenger van anymore. You've got to have smaller groups because of COVID. So we're in a period of where we have to look. Part of our flipping the bands, we have to look at all these rates for day program and make sure we get that right, because we're going to be paying providers based on actual attendance when we flip it. They're not going to get just a flat dollar amount anymore.
But we have to do that, or else we're going to continue.
Correct.
So we have to change.
We get that. No, we understand.
We just got to do it in a responsible manner.
The goal of this is to tell you and providers that are listening, this is a public meeting, right? So it's to make sure that everybody understands what we're up against to flip these bans, and that we're full disclosure as far as what all's involved, what do we have to consider, what are we considering, not that we don't need to do it. So that's not part of this presentation whatsoever.
The providers are opposed to the ban, to fee for service.
Not until it's gotten to where we are fee for service. If you go back through history, providers as a group have been pushing for fee for service. So have the people coming and speaking in public, like some of our regulars that we used to have. State legislators are pushing it, right? The oversight.
Right. Big.
You know, providers, when Buscemi was here, we're constantly, after Tom Waring and Buscemi, saying, when are we going to go fee for service? Why aren't we going fee for service? We need to go fee for service. So now that we're in that mechanism and it's reality, I think it's starting to sink in. It's not all roses, you know. It's not just like you're going to make a ton of money, which I think that's what folks thought.
Well, I don't think
back in the day.
I don't think it's long-term, it's gonna be okay. But I think in the short term, our providers are struggling.
Yep.
And, and this is Commissioner Rollins and those listening. I think it's a short-term situation, but we do have to look out for those folks because there are some that didn't get, the extra PPP money. There are those out there that we're gonna have to look at each individually.
Yeah, so you look at,
Is it your opinion there's gonna be a shortfall with some of the, with some of them?
yes.
I mean, what long-term's gonna be, but,
Yes, like one provider, I'll just use one that I know of off the top of my head, because we've been talking to them, they have a $1.2 million they make off B's and I's. That means I'm taking it out of their annual allotment of funds, but their expenses haven't changed. I'm taking the revenue, but they're still operating the same programs they were before we flipped. So they got to earn that back through service delivery. And we have to look at how we need to redistribute those state dollars, because we're not trying to make money off flipping the vans. We want to recirculate or recycle, reinvest the state. We're not trying to take 9 million out, and put back 2. We're trying to take it out and put it back with much thought. Mary, you look like you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that when you look at if the money is being pushed out and and we are spending state dollars at this point, because we don't earn the federal match until the service is rendered, okay?
right.
So if a lot of state money is sitting out there unmatched, it is not an efficient use of our state dollars.
Okay.
When the legislators give us, when you were in the legislature and you said, DDS we're gonna give you you're gonna get $100 million. You're expecting us to pull down the federal match, and you consider that our budget at that point. When we get the raises for people, we're only getting 30 cents on the dollar. We have to go earn the other 70 cents or whatever the match is now. You see what I'm saying? So if it's sitting out there not being earned, then we are not actually living on a mandate. We want to push everything back into the fight is what we're saying.
So temporarily, we pull it back in and push it back out in another fashion, still in state dollars, but our goal all along is to adjust our rates with HHS so that those become matchable rates, not fully state funded increases.
Right.
But in order for us to pivot, we got to temporarily take the state dollars, say, okay, well, ideally our rates should be higher over here, but they're not, and it's a long process to get that done. We got to put these state dollars over here to fill this hole, and we're arguing or working with the CMS all along to get those rates up. And Pat, I don't know if you even want to say something here.
I think we also need to say one thing about the cost reports. That has been a hindrance for this process. Because the HHS is concerned that if we don't have enough cost in our system, or we can't prove we have the cost in our system, then we will be ending up in a payback situation. So we're trying to push those cost reports. Again, here's the domino thing. The cost report proves that we have cost in our system, and then they can increase our rates, right? If we never did a cost report, we can't get that, justify a rate increase. However, we're having difficulty getting the information via the providers because everybody does their cost reports differently and put different things in different places. That's why Chris is so heck bent. I know we're public, so I don't want to use any other words. Heck bent on getting providers to follow an audit plan that we can literally utilize is in a reasonable manner without rebuilding everybody's cost reports all the time.
Are we behind in the cost report?
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't filed one
Yes.
since 2012. We've got one.
Okay, that's what.
2016 got filed before the person downstairs left. 13 to 15 is being worked on currently by a CPA firm that Health and Human Services has hired.
Okay.
And we're working with them daily almost, trying to keep giving data and answer their questions. They have 17 baked and ready for me to finalize, but I'm having some issues with provider reports that I'm working through because right now we're facing a payback, and I know that's not right. It's just obviously not correct on some of these. We can get into the details of that if you want, and then 18 and 19, we're having to do ourselves, and we're going to start, we've already started, but we got to start being able to do that annually They're due November 30th. So we've got to get it back to where we are doing our own cost report every year by November 30th. And we have started that process, but it's been painful because I got four people, including myself, part-time with other job duties dedicated to this. And we're in the process of hiring someone new, and a big chunk of their job when they get in here will be working on this.
How come CMS didn't come down on us
Good question.
5 years ago and say, you know, you're in heap of trouble, you've got to do this now?
I think they are coming down on HHS across the street because they're breathing down our neck because they know they don't have what they're supposed to have from us. So it's a ticking time bomb issue that certainly they're grappling with across the street.
And I would like to be able to answer that question, but, you know, there's just certain
Right.
questions we just simply can't answer because.
Yeah, why didn't anybody bring it to the commission to say, oh, by the way, this thing that we're supposed to be doing, we never did? Nobody came to us. No, I mean, nobody, I mean, it was like, what, we haven't done this thing.
And
we're supposed
according
to
to somebody that works here, they said they all do it, but nobody brought it to us.
I would like
I'm
to
not-
see
I
us,
wasn't-
I would like to see us as a commission develop a calendar that shows, these are the things we have to do in you know, that are normal for a commission. These are the things that have to be done in January. These are the things that have to be done in February. These are the things, you know, that we need to make sure are being done, because I don't want that, something like that. If we were gone, you know, we need to make sure somebody that takes our places knows to check for those things.
Well, I actually have on my to-do list, which I just added this week, in fact, is I'm creating my own commission monthly calendar so that I can remember
Yes.
what I need to do when, because this spending plan slipped off on me. Pat's like, you know, where are we? Had this for our August meeting. I'm like, oh, Lord, I thought we did that in September. He's like, no, August. And I said, oh my gosh, okay. Well, right now, I don't
This year, it's
have enough
rollover.
time to get it.
We don't have any new funds, so it's just a rollover, but, yeah, it is.
What's that?
It was a good year to miss it with continuing resolution.
Yeah. So I need that
Yeah,
myself,
but
and so I'll be glad to
even
share
like
it,
with
but it's way more than fiscal.
Yeah,
There's
and
other
even
things.
like with the audit. with
You
the-
need to know that a waiver renewal is coming up in 2 years. I mean, we say it, but I know that when you leave this meeting, you go on to your regular lives. And that's gonna, you know, you're not gonna remember. Yes.
And we need to be able to tell the next commission too, these are the things that we found and we
That's
need to
a
make
great
sure are
idea.
And
followed.
one more, and I presume that it's fully disclosed to Legislative Audit Council or whoever else, Ways and Means and Finance Committee about the cost report problem.
I informed them when I got here.
Okay, all right, so this is not new news at this point.
No,
No,
Governor's
this has been very
office
public for years.
yeah,
Governor's office knows, all that stuff.
but it's taken us a long time to recover from, a very long time.
And I think that a lot of this, again, is because the information is just not, it's not correct. There's just no way. And then we find out that some providers haven't done like HASCII cost reports, that they just kind of left this off of their radar.
And it's even worse because we have, as I've dug into the 2017 with some of these paybacks, what I have found is our own staff, whoever they were, can't take a number off of this form and put it on this form on the right line item. And, you know, for example, it may be reported by the provider as respite, and they put it under private vehicle mods. And I'm like, so I found like 20 of those yesterday. I pulled all the cost reports and went through them personally. And I'm like, we can't even put numbers on the, so I have to redo, you know, that's the problem we're running into. We're reperforming. I gotta sign that
No,
thing.
you're not
Penalty of perjury.
you're not reperforming, you are performing. Reperforming implies that they were performed in the first
Well,
place.
some of the stuff has already been done, but I have no confidence in
Yeah.
it. So I'm having to redo it, or my staff is.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Right, so
It's okay, because once you get it right, and then if you set the plan out that we're going to go ahead and do this training, and we've had a lot of I'm sorry, I'm looking at Gary. We have a lot of folks that are saying, well, our audits are just perfect, and we're probably saying that, you know, it's not really your audit. It's an audit for us, so we can appropriately allocate those funds where they need to go, those expenses where they need to go. So it is imperative that we get this correct.
Well,
So people in the future, Stephanie, can actually have a good guidance. They don't have to recreate a wheel because we've done it for them.
There is no cost, I'm sorry, Barry, I know you got a question. There's no cost reporting training at a national level, on a local level, or in a DSN level.
I agree.
Okay, so it's hard to cast stones at a provider
That's
for
right.
doing, I was doing some of my stuff wrong, and I didn't realize it till I got
And I
here.
think that's something we
So-
need to have as a form that we use, and this is how we report it, and every.
We're doing a cost report training next week.
Okay, and every
And we're developing
agency needs to do
checklists
it the
and-
same
And
way.
And I think ultimately,
We're
we're
getting
getting
away
talking
from
about
paper
contract
filing and
enforcement,
electronic.
that's something we need to put in there.
Yes.
That your contract's using our mechanism.
Right, yes.
Go ahead, Barry, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that those providers watching us here today, and that's the point of it being taped, for better or worse, is they need to understand that we do wanna go to fee-for-service for Van B's and Van Nuys as of October 1st, and we've been talking about going to Van B's and Van Nuys fee-for-service since last June, and you're saying, oh, we gotta take $10 million from them. Well, they should know that we have to take $10 million from them. They should have been planning for it. So what have they done to plan for us taking this money from them?
I
If
think,
they do nothing different, what does that do us any good? The point is, if we don't do it now, if we don't do it in October, when do we do it? Because whenever you do it, they're gonna complain about it. And so, the question is, what is going to change between now and if we do it any longer? Because we said we were gonna do it October 1st.
Well,
And it's more important, I think, to me, if we talk about
Not-
these Van Nuys, because that's what we're trying to do this October.
and I'm not slamming our providers, but this is my assessment, Barry. A lot of our leaders are program folks, they're not finance folks. They don't understand the fiscal impact of things. They know it's coming, but they don't have the training, the knowledge and skills to pivot. They may not have it in their finance office. So it's incumbent upon us to help them step through this, educate them and give them insight into those things that they need to do so that they're successful. Because in the end, to Mary's point, this should all be about the providers still continuing to exist when we're done. We don't need to do this, and then all of a sudden we have mass chaos and people, filing bankruptcy, and so we got to do it right. We got to communicate it right, and we got to provide technical assistance to those that need it. Now, not everybody needs it,
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but you've been trying to do that since you've been here.
not in this particular
Well,
vein, but
general
We were
sense.
dealing with case management. That first year was trying to get a 6-year-old, we knew it was coming type of thing over the line. We did set a deadline and move it, but that is small potatoes compared to this. Now, it's improved service and it's incentivized people to do more service.
125%.
And then we can be able to leverage their service as we move forward with changing our quality assurance. Here again, another domino. To change our quality assurance way we do things, we need to make sure we have good, strong case management and train them. So but we set a deadline of October. That's what the commission set a deadline as. I'm not saying, I know, and I asked during that meeting if we had some leverage to be able to say, this is not going to work at this time, we want to change that, and this is why. It's not to take our resolve away that we're going to do it, it's to say that we have to do this in a measured, meaningful, and responsible way.
And I'll say that's the biggest difference between that and like our final rule compliance, which is always, the conflict-free compliance has always been, well, it's coming in 2023 and we'll ask for some money, we don't get it from the legislature, and oh, well, we'll deal with that when 2023 comes. I mean, there was a lot of that, dealing with that side of things. It was just, well, we know it's there, but it's not really a deadline because we're not really doing anything for it. I
It's a
mean,
deadline now.
it's a deadline now, but I mean, for years it was, well, it was always a quick, what are we doing? Well, we'll just kind of deal with that down the road.
Well, Gary, we also have a situation where they're dealing with COVID.
Right.
They've got a lot of things going on in these places. I mean, a lot of them lost more than half the people that are supposed to be in their day programs, and only half have come back, and then they don't want to let the staff go because they're trained staff. And what if the rest of them come back and they can't get them back? you know, and that's a major issue.
Well, it is,
And so
we can't keep paying day programs to stay open with nobody there, or we can't keep paying full capacity and people are only half there. The money's just not there to do it, and we have to be responsible commissioners.
Well, I think it takes a lot of getting over I'm a nonprofit political subdivision mindset, and then I'm a business. You know, folks had to lay off their plumber, they was trained, whatever, skilled. So, I mean, it's just a lot of communication, and we do have probably five to seven boards that already are teetering on fiscal cliff, if you will. And this is just one that, just kind of kicks them over the side. So, I mean, we've got to be real careful how we work with those
Well, they have to
agencies.
combine boards, is that possible? I mean,
Well,
is that
that's a
possible?
county local decision.
Well,
county
yeah,
councils and
but
so
the
forth.
point is, we may have to do what we have to do, and then they have to decide what they have to do.
You can suggest it, but I don't think we can mandate it.
Yeah,
We can't mandate it, but we can say this is what we have to do, so we all have to do what you have to do.
well, ultimately, I would sort of circle back. I would say that the big difference is we're talking about deadlines and we're not talking about them as theoretical objects, because we're really actually seeing movement on our part. But I don't think that anybody wants to set a deadline that is so inflexible that we're not ready to hit it, as long as we're moving forward. And I think that's what, deadlines exist to give us an end date that we're supposed to have stuff done by. We also have to acknowledge that we're doing something complex to this. I think we do have to have realistic flexibility, as long as we're progressing. Again, and it's different from the conflict-free stuff, which for years was, we know it's there, but we're not really doing anything about it. Everybody from top to bottom was like, yeah, we know it's coming, but that's a decade out, we don't need to worry about it. And that's how it was from on the day I started here, 15. It was, this is a big thing coming in 2022. What are we doing about it? Not a whole lot.
Now it's 2022.
Right, now it's 2022.
Well,
I'll say that's, to the comment of the staff, I think there is a difference between having a theoretical deadline where nothing's being done and having a theoretical deadline where we're working hard towards it. But we have to be realistic about the impact of not being reasonable with that deadline.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that, and if we have to move a deadline, we have to move one, but there's a difference between not having a deadline or having a deadline and not meeting that deadline, which is what we're talking about now, which is, I'm very sad here. But if we don't meet that deadline, the point is we move that deadline. We don't just stop and have no deadline and then say, oh, well, we'll do it sometime in the future.
Right, absolutely.
As a commission, we need to move that deadline to another date and say, this is the date. And we've told y'all in commission meetings over and over, all providers listening to me right now, this is the date. And that's it.
Well, I think it would be good if we did
I mean, we also had to deal with COVID, so a lot of the analysis that Chris has been doing and a lot of things, we're doing that.
we
And
have to use
also,
really old data because the current data is not reliable.
yeah.
And we don't know that the old data isn't.
The COVID makes it more,
Sorry, Mary.
to me, COVID makes it more possible or more important that we move to fee-for-service because we have such uncertainty. So we have to move to fee-for-service because of the uncertainty. If we don't have,
I'm just saying, our time, our physical human being time, trying to get all the analysis done, trying to get all the training that is necessary done. And, Chris did not expect to have to research PPP, PPI, VRI, whatever the initials of all these federal programs, that sucks time out of your day. And there is a limited amount of bodies to do the work that has to be done. We didn't expect to have to go spend, time at programs to help people do what they needed to do, but it is what it is.
Well, the
And-
national code transition. I mean, we got a Bambi and I team that we meet frequently every 10 days. And, I lost 4 people off that team for about 2 months. Just because of the national code transition project, which is where we went from 1 hour unit to 15 minutes. Again, sounds simple. It's like, how in the world? Lots and lots of IT issues, waiver documents, rate tables,
Well, that's what we were
billing
using yesterday.
processes.
In our conversations yesterday with the providers, that was their concern. It was the uncertainty It was just, they all were so overwhelmed having to deal with COVID, the expenses that went with that, trying to, figure out what to do with their employees, with the day program. And they're not opposed to fee for service, I don't think. I just think they need some guidance. I think that's part, that was kind of the word, there was the uncertainty. And I think with training, with education, and with you guys being able, you and Mary and y'all being able to go and help them with these processes, I think that would alleviate some of the uncertainty they have and the fear they have. That, I mean, we heard it yesterday. There are some that are very scared for their boards.
But the private providers have been doing fee for service all this time. And so technically we are doing a different thing for private providers as we are for public providers, and that really shouldn't be either. We really should be doing the same for both, but we're not until we get the fee for service for all.
And I think
Every private provider, and I have a lot of respect for a lot of them, I think everybody thinks I'm anti-provider for everybody, but I'm really not. But private providers have been doing fee for service all the time they've been in business, so, and they're surviving. I mean,
I think we'll get there. I think it's gonna take a little time.
I don't wanna be retired whenever that happens. I'm gonna be 75 whenever I hear that it happens.
I thought you had already retired.
No, man, I'm still.
So anyways, we ran over big time.
Sorry.
We're good. That was a good conversation.
So the only thing I want to close with, unless y'all have more questions, is, I think the provider, what I have sensed with some emails and different communications I've had with some providers is they think we're holding back information. We're holding it close to our chest. We're up here running all these numbers and just haven't shared them with anybody. No, we can't get to running the numbers because of the point Mary made. As we get calculations made and steps made, we are sharing that progress with them. And I will say, Barry, to your point, I think we should give you a progress report every month so that you can see that management's moving, to your point is, okay, so we just agreed to move it to October. Now we're talking about maybe pushing it back again. How do we know we're actually taking this serious? So,
and how long are we gonna push it back to?
And we have a project management tool that we're using where we're tracking progress and everything. So it's not a hard thing to share. And so we can provide the commission so that y'all see that the team's working on it. Because things are completed, in progress, So
Is it that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's.
I think that's important. I'd like to see that, and I'd like for us to kind of by our next meeting, maybe have a projected date as to when you guys think we'll be ready to go. Fee for service. And I want it to be realistic. I want you guys to really look at your time and talk to those providers and make sure that y'all have time to meet with those that are struggling in that before we throw fee for service at them so quickly after COVID. I'd like to see that time frame in y'all's time frame and the plan for that. I think that would be great.
These numbers you're talking about, that these would be the numbers that would have been imposed on the providers, and we don't have, are you saying we can't give them what that would be for them to be able to project what
we have? We have. They got a sketch. They can run it themselves. I don't have any magic access. All the access I have to these reports, they have access to the same report.
So once
or can have it. It's knowledge. It's knowledge and skills again.
So I'm having trouble then understanding exactly where does the wheel come down on the ground at some point so that we say, now, as of such and such a date is drop dead, this is what's going into effect. What's the problem?
The real hang up right now is we know what we need to pull back. How do we put it back out on the streets so that it's fair to every provider and that we don't bankrupt someone? And what's the safety net program going to look like? We had a safety net for case management. We've been talking about it. Pat is thinking a good idea would be to have some form of safety net program because, again, if we do things, we can't have a rate for this board and this board and this board for the same service. We have to set a rate that's for all boards. The problem is it's going to impact every board differently. some boards will start making a lot more money and others it won't be enough. They'll be like, well, I'm still gonna be losing money. We can't give money to the lowest common denominator because then that raises all ships. So we've got to find a fair, balanced implementation let's say we want to take the day program at $35 a half-day unit. That's going to impact every single provider differently. And if we're taking $1 million from this provider, and we're saying, look, you're going to generate an additional $400,000 in day program, great, but what am I going to do about the $600,000 that I'm losing? So we've got to do it right. We've got to look at it, but we can't look at the lowly board that's struggling and give them rates so they start making money because the whole entire, that's not the way to do business.
Right, you can't.
So
You cannot.
that's your answer,
And that makes sense.
Commissioner Thomas,
I mean,
is really trying to figure out how to redistribute the wealth, if you will. Sorry, this went
We're
over.
fine, Chris. It's a good time.
I thought
But I think, yeah, I think we're,
that
all right.
Pat, did you have any final closing words?
I just have 1 minute, Gary, I know we go, but I listened to the PD conversation yesterday, and those guys are right on the money. The complexity of what Chris is describing, if I had to simplify it in my terms, is in the best of all worlds, we get a rate increase when we do the flip. If that happens, it makes everything easy, because the water level goes up with the rate increase, and even the weakest provider is covered. If we are forced to make the B&I split without a rate increase, now we're faced with the dilemma of, I think everybody would agree, the money has to stay in the system. So if we do a rate increase, there's going to be winners and losers in there. We've got to do something to maintain equity until we get the rate increase. So under either scenario, if we could give some assurances to the board, I can't give them 100% assurance to the board, but I think we have to have a principle that whenever we do the flip, they're not going to lose revenue, at least in some sort of safety net world. Okay, right away, that relieves 90% of
Just
the
temporarily though. We're
temporarily, but it should, and waiver case management gave us a lot of lessons. When people had to do it, they did it, but they needed that safety net to start up the
And that's
the capitalistic instincts in people to fix it.
And we made a very good transition to case management. It's
That is
125%
one service.
But what I want to
130% increase in.
What I want to caution you is when we listen to providers, there's another thing going on. It's called COVID. In that COVID, when you have, and day program is the poster child, when you have utilization going down, and we have put it ban money, we're really not taking money back because we're taking money back. We're taking money back because you haven't performed the service for which we're not going to get revenue. And if we don't take it back, we're going to end up with red ink, and we are not going to meet our mission to run without a deficit.
Exactly.
How would this?
And so this FMAP thing is causing a lot of convoluted thinking out there, and we have a hard time wrestling with it. It exists for the betterment of the system, and it's got to be visible to everybody. But at the end of the day, we still got to run a system, and this capitated model, like Barry said, there's so much unpredictability out there that if we're not careful, there's going to be a lot of underutilization, and providers are going to end up with, quite frankly, a windfall. Not that, I'm not begrudging them, that's the capitated model, but that is not part of the capitated model. So if I'm talking to providers, when we're going to do the flip, please, we don't hurt anybody. But don't confuse that with the COVID problem, where if your day program has dropped off the table, you have to adjust your day program to meet the revenues you have. And I think that's what they don't quite understand, or they understand, but it's a hard decision. It's really hard, and we have to be sympathetic to it. And quite frankly, we've already contributed significant in FMAP to get us to June 30th. And Mary and Chris made a good decision on July 1st. We're giving them 100% of the money now. Now, we may have to call some of that back here shortly, but we erred on the high side when we started the year.
All right, Mr. Miller, you had one question? He had one question.
It wasn't a question, it was, what we need to see, what we don't want to happen is we get stuck with this ball. It's our job, from a legislative standpoint, to say, okay, this is where we are. We need to let them know so that if that
Oh,
ball don't
read my
drop,
mind, that's exactly right.
if that ball don't drop, when we expect for it to drop, we told you. Because the only thing that you're concerned with, where's the blood? Is the blood over there or is it over here? We told you guys, this is the plan, what we plan to implement. If it doesn't work, we also told you, you need to act. And that means that the state then will have to make a decision and may go back to the federal government because remember, we are their feeders. Because ultimately, on this COVID, all the decisions is being made in Washington, D.C. So we have to prepare that the state doesn't get stuck in the middle of this too. So we have to give them clear instructions that these are the recommendations all the way to the top. So that the top can't say, well, and you guys just told us this. Because who suffers? Disabilities and special needs, the folks that we're supposed to service. Then they'll say, you guys didn't do your job, we just saw that.
Okay. 2:45. I think it's time for us to adjourn.
Yes.
Entertain a motion.
Very cool.
Dave gets out of it
Therefore,
sometimes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.